One of the hot button issues in hospitality right now is sustainability. As it should be, and a lot of people out there are doing a lot of great things. From trying as much as possible to use entire animals, to kicking plastic straws in the ass. But that's not what I'm concerned about. Just what did it take to get product X to location Y, and how much damage is it doing on its merry damn way? Are we ignoring a bigger issue? Let's figure it out. I'm Julian. Welcome to Baratomy. So what exactly am I talking about? Well, climate change is a major concern for anyone on Earth and isn't drinking the Kool-Aid. Taking more public transport, electric cars, and energy-efficient appliances are all good things, but what about our food and drink? How much damage does, for example, a Chilean raspberry do between Chile and its final destination of Saudi Arabia? Is any of it actually worth it? So while figures vary, food and beverage transportation accounts for a bare minimum of 30 million tons of CO2 goodness yearly. Factor in refrigerated transport and the packaging. For some reason, any figures I could find didn't account for all that. And the theoretical numbers start getting goddamn dicey. I'm not going to get into the ecological impact of various farming or production methods, nor are we going to talk about end-user food waste. Just the finished product's cost between production and packaging being finished and consumption. That'll be more than enough doom and gloom for one day. Look, I'm not standing here in an ivory tower. In fact, I've done pretty badly with this myself in the past. Running venues in the UAE where basically everything is shipped in from abroad, and the market is so image-centric that what little does grow locally is generally ignored in the face of fancy pants imports. And this brings me to the sore subject of raspberries, little fuckers. This innocent little berry is a global favorite, and it's basically a weapon of mass destruction. In my younger days of insisting on everything being used in my bars being fresh come hell or high water, I was paying an average of $7 a pack for raspberries that weighs less than a smartphone. The raspberry is a great example of the cost of globalization. Now, globalization has been great overall. After all, without globalization, life as we know it wouldn't exist. No smartphones, no medicine, and of course, no raspberries any time of year. Any decently bougie supermarket in any corner of the world is gonna have fresh berries available. Dead winter in Sweden? No problem. Live in Singapore, of course very well known for its acres of raspberry farms? No problem. I'm pretty sure that I can find fresh berries in any country on Earth at any time of the year with minimal effort. From the same company, one of the world's biggest players, I bought berries from the US, Spain, Chile, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. Seasonality be damned. I don't answer to something as minor as the weather.
Top secret CIA Weather Control Division, Dick speaking. I mean pizza store!
All those berries were flown to wherever I was at. Air freighting a kilo of berries from, say, Chile to the UK puts out an average of almost 6 kilos of CO2. But that's not true. My calculations, GPT, don't account for how they got to the airport, how they got to the supermarket, or to whatever bar or restaurant. And they don't account for what has got to be an astronomical amount generated by the need to keep all this chilled while it sits around in warehouses and supermarkets doing jack shit. The general assumption of all of those extras, with the assumption that everything needs to be at least moderately efficient, adds another 600 or so grams. So let's make this a bit real world. I ain't got a clue what a kilo of carbon dioxide is. We've pretty much all been in a car at one point or another, right? A kilo of CO2 is round about what your average car farts out driving 2 3/4 kilometers. For the Americans watching, a kilo is about 2 MAGA hats, and 2,750 meters is just over 475 F-150s lined up end to end. Or if you're boring, 2.5 pounds and about 1.6 miles. My units make about as much, maybe more sense than Imperial though. When I was still in the fresher death train, I'd use 8-ish raspberries to make a Clover Club. Just the air freight. With 8 average raspberries flown from Chile to the UK, over 500 meters of driving. Shit. And it'll be a kind of crummy Clover Club. It's becoming a lot more understood that a lot of the time, fresh is kind of a loosely used term in the world of fruit and veg. While it may have just been gorgeous at the farm, or if someone's using their brain juices harvested while underripe, After however many days of being manhandled all over the planet, a hell of a lot of products are gonna wind up tasting like paper. Frozen fruits, however, can taste a hell of a lot better, not to mention actually contain some nutrition. Yeah, they look like crap on a good day and are pretty much unusable for anything requiring texture, but ain't that a big reason why chefs and bartenders think so much of themselves? Figure it out. Not being able to garnish something with a shiny, fresh blackberry is not gonna be the end of days. But freezing takes a hell of a lot of carbon, right? Yeah, it does, but it allows for far more efficient shipping by sea, and through some physics magic I don't understand, keeping frozen stuff frozen is way more efficient than keeping something just, well, cold. Now, I don't want anyone to think that I'm singling out berries here. Some shit I just don't get, lobster. Look, I love eating oversized underwater cockroaches of all shapes and sizes. But the outsized obsession that so many people have with North American lobster and the most pointless of crustaceans, king crab, is not just weird, considering the questionable value for money, but it's inefficient to the point of stupidity. Okay, before we start getting people excited in the comments, let's forget about my thoughts on the flavor or lack thereof in North American lobster and king crab, and just give the whole lobster thing a bit of shit for now. Where's the last place I saw live American lobster? In a tank, in a restaurant, in Dubai. I don't think it swam there. Do lobsters swim? Is it more of a scuttle? Anyway, live stuff in tanks is a marketing ploy as old as time. It's alive, it can't be any fresher. And I'm not gonna try and convince anyone that frozen lobster is worth being cold food. Keeping with Dubai, if that sucker just went in the tank and hasn't been sitting around for a week waiting for someone to sell it, it still hasn't eaten since some dude in plastic pants shanghaied it out of the water over in Maine or whatever. And how long might that be? Well, let's be kind and assume that it's as fast as can be. Time on the boat, sorting, packaging, transport to the airport, the flight, transport from the airport to go sit in a warehouse, transport to the restaurant. I'm gonna be really generous and say that figures 3 days. It's probably closer to a week. All that time, old Mr. Krabs is starving. He's not gonna get any slimmer, hard shell and all, but he'll shrink inside the shell. Fun! Flavor, bad. Texture, bad. Value, bad. But we still freak out over it. Now, that same emissions exercise with your average lobster, but this time making its way from Maine to Dubai, 6 kilos of CO2. Holy crap. 16.5 kilometers of driving. A big issue with this? Almost anywhere with access to an ocean, and a few places without, have got something to replace the Yankee lobster. Rock lobster, spiny lobster, langoustine, the million type of crab out there. It's astounding to me that people will pay out of the nose for subpar quality when a higher quality replacement is on their doorstep. In the UAE, I could get live Canadian lobster at the supermarket. Not that I did, I'm not made of damn money. Local spiny lobster that the Gulf of Arabia is just goddamn full of? Nowhere to be seen. I'll head to the fish market then. Hey, local lobster. Frozen only, because no one wants it. Ridiculous. When it comes to seafood, we all harp on about overfishing, sustainable fisheries, and dirty-ass pollutant fish farms, but we'll pay crazy money for Norwegian salmon in the US, a country with its own salmon. A king's ransom for half-starved French oysters in Singapore, when better quality Indonesian oysters go to a fucking canning plant. It's depressing. Now for the biggest offender in this carbon crapshoot, mainly because the people responsible have literally every opportunity to make it go away and just don't. Let me get started and see if you can guess who I'm talking about. Do you like trash? Do you like it so much you want to pay for it?
Oh, I love trash.
No? Well, you are. We all are. Pretty much everything gets packaging, and then we throw that packaging away. Packaging is important. It's needed to protect a product, make it look good, and make it functional. But what about this gaudy fucking disaster? This bottle weighs 700 grams. 18 and a half of those are just this lump of plastic. But Julian, we can recycle the glass. Sure you can. I mean, you can do your part and pop it into your recycling bin, and then it falls apart. For a whole bunch of reasons. As little as 20% of glass sent to recyclers might actually be recycled. And that recycling process is energy intensive as hell. Let's look at this. Diageo love to pretend that they're gonna single-handedly save the world, and yet, Blue Label, 1.5 kilos of glass. That blue hue, now it's basically gonna be rejected by most recyclers. Oh, but Blue Label sells so little in the grand scheme of things. Don't be a Debbie Downer, Julian. Sit down, have a beer, chill out. Well, good thing my local beer uses bottles that aren't just made here, but also sanitized and reused. So I'm not paying to ship trash, but what if it wasn't a local beer? Apparently 2 billion bottles of beer in the process of being shipped internationally at any given time. We're paying not just to ship trash, but we're paying too damn much. Cans are a thing, right? 15 grams of aluminum versus 200 grams of glass. We'll ignore draft for now, even though it is much better, until I realize I'm paying to ship empty kegs back to where they came from. So, let's get some fancy pants Belgian beer over to Los Angeles. I got a feeling that this is gonna sting. 26 grams of CO2 for your beer. I wanted to make a mean joke, but I know nothing about California. I don't know, something about Elon Musk.
Go f yourself.
Makes a load of sense to bug the electric car guy when my whole comparison sample is about gas-powered cars, but whatever. Speaking of 66 meters. Well, that's obviously not so bad compared to our lobster. It's downright Greta approved. That's kind of like comparing apples to oranges or lobsters to beer. A hell of a lot more beer than lobster ships after all. ChatGPT's educated guess is that at any given time a cool 2 billion bottles of beer are in transit. Pretty sure lobsters go a bit less. But what if our Belgian beer was in a can? 17 grams, 43 meters, a whole 35% less. And keeping in mind that doesn't factor in any of what it actually takes to produce and then eventually deal with bottles versus cans at the end of their initial use. Hint, hint, aluminum stomps glass. Badly. So looking at all this, why isn't it being dealt with? Well, it comes down to consumers, middlemen, and producers. Let's start with us. We're really bad at actually making even small changes to our lifestyle to benefit the environment, let alone benefit ourselves. We don't like change, even a little. We're so used to the access that globalization has given us to stuff that we're unwilling to give up a lot of things that we A, can absolutely live without, and B, are massively overpaying for. Plus, our culture is slow as hell to change. Well, yes and no. We'll jump onto trends, bandwagons, and marketing messages super quick, but we're so slow to let them go. Look at lobster. What was once considered such trash in the US that someone made up a story about it being illegal to serve to prisoners, quickly, with the help of a little marketing, shot up in price and became synonymous with luxury, something that sticks today, even as we know more about what lobsters eat and have access to more alternatives. We are so used to seeing our supermarket shelves have absolutely zero response to the changing of seasons that we'd simply change our supermarket if one tried to do the right thing here. Beer? Well, cans have been proven to preserve a beer's flavor better. They pour into a glass better. They're easier to deal with. And in theory, they could save drinkers a pretty penny. But we're so married to the look and the feeling of a glass bottle that it's a massive battle to get people to accept cans over bottles. Hell, people are so married to bottles that aluminum bottles haven't taken off. I myself, back in days, had a whinge about the aluminum Heineken bottle. It just didn't have the weight. What a dick. Well, what about the middlemen? Doesn't it make sense for an importer or distributor, whatever, to try and make the change? Well, no. Well, an importer is going to have to pay top dollar to producers and exporters, possibly before they even get their hands on whatever product, taking on a lot of risk. What if they can't sell it all? The potential risks are just too high, and the risks of making the switch towards greener products are huge. Plus, imagine you're a liquor importer. While small producers might wine and dine you to get a spot on your portfolio, it is the complete opposite when dealing with the Diageos, Pernod Ricards, and AB InBevs of the world. They'll chew you up and spit you out without missing a beat. Speaking of producers, a number of small brands are doing really good stuff. This Australian vodka is made out of grocery store rejects. This British distillery ships spirits in 5-liter boxes, expecting bars and restaurants to refill the same bottle. And countless breweries go for cans only. So why aren't the big boys doing anything except for vague promises on their websites? I won't be convinced by Diageo and Bacardi's paper bottles until they at least start seriously testing them in a market. So don't ask. Well, it's because, simply put, they don't have to, and there's little reason for them to. While we can say the fact that the planet just seems to randomly catch on fire all the time should be reason enough, let's be honest here. Just look at the car industry. All the newer entrants into the electric car field would have you believe that we have a commitment to tomorrow. But then pray Wattel did none of them, with all their billions of dollars and thousands of engineers, make serious inroads into electric cars until Tesla started being a threat.
I used to have a Mustang back when cars made sounds.
There's no real benefit for them to. Building factories, designing parts, and setting up supply chains is expensive. And what about the factories already in place that make gas cars? Cutting off my left arm to promote my right is what it is. The same thing goes for the food and beverage industries. For a huge brewer to leave bottles behind is gonna at best leave them with a whole bunch of expensive bottling equipment gathering dust, a hefty bill for newer extra canning equipment, and a massive amount of work to train new people and develop new workflows. It just doesn't make financial sense to them. Producers of fresh berries? Well, the giant in the field, Driscoll's, for them addressing the situation from their end basically means shutting down the majority of their business. Not gonna happen. Same goes for fishermen all over the world. An Alaskan king crab fisherman might feel bad that the whole product their career is based around does huge amounts of ecological damage, and on top of that prevents fishermen in other parts of the world from gaining earning potential. But are we expecting them to go and tell their families, tough titties, y'all, we're doing life on hard mode now? What's an Alaskan accent? Anyway, speaking of money, well, let's just all buy local, right? Or at least demand from the people we buy from products that address the issues. Same old problem going back to when organic started being a thing. It's expensive. When there's no reason for huge producers to change their ways, it's down to new and small players to do it. Enter economies of scale. These small companies simply can't produce and market at the scale that's gonna let them compete. If they get close, well, it's still gonna be cheaper for a massive corporation to drop prices in the at-risk market than it is to change anything about production. Maybe instead of dropping prices, they just do a blitzkrieg of marketing. I've been that guy, the one who bought a different brand because it came with a couple of glasses. After all, they might only have to drop prices long enough to drive the upstart hippie out of business, and then boom, I'm back on top, baby. So it is up to us, the consumer, to pick up the slack. And this is where reality kicks in. We're not just slow to make changes to our lifestyle, but we're also sensitive about what we assign value to. Simply put, most people don't actually assign that much value to the greenness of a product. On top of that, I just want to go buy some raspberries, lobsters, and beer, man. I don't want to have to think about how bad for the environment each and everything that I buy is. I might make decisions that are easy based on what's put in front of me. Maybe going for the one brand because it obviously uses less plastic than that brand. On-site consumers, aka bars and restaurants? Well, these businesses are of course famous for having razor-thin profit margins. Why take on the risk? Am I going to change my menu and risk losing sale? Of course not. On the drink side, am I going to risk the support offered by major brands for something like the environment? Ha! And what about the neighbors? Just because I'm aware of how much damage all these fancy pants products can cause, are my competitors? If I change out my menu to reflect all these concerns and the neighbors don't, am I shooting myself in the foot? Can governments help? Well, at face value, yeah. Imposing tariffs, for example, on items where the supply chain don't pass muster environmentally. Or maybe providing subsidies to local producers of products that are usually imported. It's unfortunately a lot more complex than that. All we have to do is look at the ridiculous quagmire that's been going on around one product or another in the EU, basically since the beginning of the EU. Plus, governments always try to fine line when it comes to making decisions. Well, democratic governments, that is. Consider what governments are dealing with now in early 2024, desperately trying to manage inflation. How are people going to react if prices rise even further because of environmental concerns? So what are we going to do? Well, what we can. I don't expect everyone here to completely change their shopping habits or totally change their menu, but enough small actions can have an effect. For your own consumption, try where you can to buy local products and things with reasonable packaging. It doesn't have to be everything, or it could be nearby instead of local, but every little bit helps. At work, push and promote local and reasonably packaged items as much as you can. Reductions in waste and nose to tail are great things, but they don't address the issues that our industry causes the environment at their source. Only our buying power can do that. So that'll do it. I want to hear your thoughts on this in the comments. Have you made any changes to your procurement at work or your personal shopping habits to address the environment? Let me know.